there was always opportunities to get into sort of the edges of these things. I would consult for a company and then there was opportunities to invest. And so I could either trade time for equity or I could take some of my capital and put it in. And so that really started to show me all of these little companies in Calgary that I consulted for. And I saw like, well, this is done well and this isn't done well. And I know how to fix that. And so I'd see these things. And that's really where it started to allow me to look at this a lot better because I got to see the inner workings of all these really, really cool companies.
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 131. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Before I get into it, if you like this show, I'm trying to get more exposure around, so please share the damn thing. I would appreciate it. Today's show, this guy, me and him go back, and we're going to go back. I'm sure we'll get into it, but we go back a long, long time ago. And so, we've kept in touch loosely over all these years, but, we probably definitely lost track of each other for at least 15 years at least. So, anyways, I knew nothing about him before he showed up at the club, and then we hung out for a lot of time, and then disappeared for a long time, and then recently got reconnected over the last 4 or 5 years since I kind of started my business. So I'm looking forward to this one. So please name and who you are.
Thanks. So I'm James Costello. I am currently the CEO and part shareholder of Tool Shed Brewing Company.
It's funny, man, because I've had numbers and like a bunch of people through the show, and there's always like a Costello connection, and it's
okay.
I don't know what, like, you and I run similar circles, then you kind of like blew up and went down a bunch of different circles, but there's always like this. Do you know this guy James Costello? Yeah, I know Costello. Like, there's always this like back to Costello. So, yeah, man. When
hopefully mostly good.
Yeah, it's all obviously. When I came up with the show idea, I built this Excel doc. And there was a column of like people that I knew that fell into artist, entrepreneur, and athlete. Mm-hmm. I knew you definitely were an artist.
Fair.
Athlete. And I was like, you might be able to do something. But I always knew that you had an entrepreneurial thing going on. So when I built out my first list, you were on my list. And so there's this this is almost 4 years ago, I built this list out. And I went through my phone and I was like, who falls into these categories? I'm like, Costello. So I put you on there, and we're 131 deep now, and here you are. So
right. Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm super excited. Back then, it would have been a weird conversation during the COVID period with some of my companies. So,
it would have been painful.
Would have been really painful.
Yeah, we would have.
Tears.
Yeah, we would have need like the. The couches that you lie on, we would have different angles for the show.
Cuddling.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, man, you've seen a few of these. So
yeah,
I'm excited for this. Like, you and I are good friends, but it's funny because you don't know my history like way back. I definitely don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know yours. So that's why I'm excited about this one. So take it back. How you grew up, where you grew up, how your parents inspired you, just kind of like that whole piece, and then we'll kind of like. We'll weave our way to definitely the embassy, and we're gonna sit on that for a while, and then we'll keep going to where you are today and what you're up to.
I love it. Okay, so where I started, I'm Calgary born and raised.
Mm-hmm.
I've only spent 3 years living somewhere else, and so I'm a Calgary guy. This is my world. This is my home.
Yep.
I spent 3 years in London, which we can talk. I'm sure we'll dig into a little bit, but other than that, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I love the city.
Where'd you grow up? What part of the city?
So I grew up in Rosedale, so northwest, sort of in the center, and so I went there kindergarten to grade 9, which was like I don't know, maybe 200 people in the entire school, and I lived 4 doors away, so I had a very, very small world at that time, and then I went to Crescent Heights High School, and so I graduated there in 1998, and it was a different school back then, so I learned a lot of street smart stuff. back in those days.
When you so going to the same school from K to 9, I did the same thing. Went to this school called St. Mike's in the Southwest.
Okay.
And so same thing, like it's kind of like a bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're with this group of people for a long time, and there's like this like pecking order, like when you're in grade 6, like the grade, who the cool kids are in grade 9 and grade 8, and it's like
That's
this.
Right.
It is very like insular. Like you're kind of.
Yeah.
I found it. I'm still friends with some of those people that like going back to those years, like because you're together for so long.
Big time. Like I still have a core group of guys that I've known since like age of 4, and they're all still here. A lot of them are actually still in the Northwest. Like they're still sort of where they grew up. And we still meet up sometimes. It's getting further and farther between because of children and life. But we've known each other for 40 years, and it's pretty wild.
It's strange. And it's, the reason I'm on this, because it's rare. I think it's rare for a lot of people don't have that experience, like, especially 4 doors away from school. Like it's kind of it's so tightly knit.
Totally. Yeah. And back then, like, growing up in Rosedale, we used to get on our bikes and we had freedom to roam that neighborhood. It was totally safe. You could do whatever you want. So we'd finish school and vanish until dinner time, and parents didn't care about that. But it was also, the community was so tight that there was probably a parent watching us the whole time. We just didn't know about it. But yeah, it was wild back then. It was safe and easy, and
Did
a lot
you
smaller.
It's funny because when I get you to go back that far, it's kind of simple life, right? Like
crazy simple.
I was the same way. Like you go to school and then you ride your bikes, you play street hockey, you skateboard or whatever, and do it till dinner time, and then maybe after dinner a little bit, and then go to bed. Like
it was hockey in the outdoor rink on the winter times. Yeah.
It's kind of simple. Like it's memorable but simple.
Yeah. It was easy. Like you look back then, and it felt hard when you were doing it. But now you look at it and you're like, what I wouldn't give to just put in your clock and be fed and told when to go to bed, and it'd be great.
It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
What were you into back then? What was was it simple? Like were these like simple things that kind of kept you interested?
What was I into? Early days, like it was just sports, whatever sports we were into. But I was never a core sports guy, so I just played whatever was in front of me. I did grow up on the outdoor rink, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, but it's playing ODR all winter long. I even got so involved that I was the rink rat for a while with a couple of buddies, and so we would actually take care of flooding it and scraping it and building the boards, and so trying to make it the best ice possible. And so I did that. The long winters, that was our world. So it was a lot of that. Cycling, that was sort of the early days of me getting into cycling, and I think we've talked a bit about the bike world, but I got into just goofing around with bikes, and then I moved into mountain biking, and urban riding was a thing for a little while, where you try and build a bike that wouldn't break if you jumped off staircases and stuff like that. And so I was doing a lot of that. And
was the biking thing like did you want to do something with it, or was it like a group of friends that got you interested, or like what got you on that path?
It was the freedom. Yeah. Like it unlocked a much bigger city for me. So it was, you jump on your bike and you can cross over to Crescent Heights in a couple of minutes, and you can go further than that. So you can get to convenience stores. There was a little like local convenience store that we could get to and buy candy or whatever you wanted to get, Slurpees back then when diabetes wasn't a thing.
Yeah, man. It's as you say this, dude. So when I grew up in Strathcona, and we would ride our bike into Coach Hill, and there used to be a 7-Eleven over there. Just kind of like over by Patterson.
Yep.
And it was this, like we'd ride our bikes over there, get Slurpees, and they'd usually have like a stand-up old school video game. It was like,
totally
whatever it was, man, like
Street Fighter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Or Mortal Kombat. One of those. Yep.
So as you're telling this story, I'm having all these flashbacks to, like, I know the exact path that we took to get to all these places.
Yeah. Same. We had a 7-Eleven on 4th Street Northwest, and that's exactly, we'd bike up there and you'd get a 2-liter thing of Slurpee and have a sugar coma for a couple hours afterwards. I was probably a terrorist to my parents. Yeah.
And now that you know, right, now that you have kids, and you're like, I must have come home jacked.
I would never, ever give my kids a Slurpee. It would just be, it's bad enough when you give them like a little gummy and they're like bouncing off the walls.
Juiced.
Yeah.
The sport thing, was it just like you said, whatever's in front of you, or is your parents like kind of like allowing you to do things, or was it just like?
Yeah, my parents are really good about letting me do whatever I wanted. So, but they also encouraged the opportunity. So they put you into soccer at 3 or whatever, and baseball at whatever time you could. So I was always exposed to all those sports. And then really, like when you get into school, so I guess junior high, that's when you start to get those, like you can choose a volleyball, basketball, football, whatever it was. And so, at that point, I just was like, oh, try out for something great. I'm going to do that because all my friends were into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was never, it wasn't until I was in high school that I like fell in love with a sport. Like actually started to focus on one, and that's rugby. So I played rugby out of accident. I
Crescent had a high school team?
yeah, we had a great team. Yeah, and we had this competitive advantage because there's those stairs that everybody runs, the legendary stairs at Crescent Heights, and so our team, we do a full practice and then we'd have to go do the stairs, and we'd get up to, I don't know, 8 or 9 sets, sort of mid-season, and so our team was super fit. We were super strong. And I remember there was some other high schools that tried to ban us from using it. And they said, it's a competitive advantage. It doesn't work. And I remember our coach said, just come use them. Like you can.
They're public, right?
Yeah. They're public stairs. And, but yeah, I got really into rugby back then. And that was, I sort of said I played it by accident, but I was playing football in the fall. So every grade 10 kid is encouraged to play football. I played football and it was okay. I enjoyed the contact, but it was okay. And then the coach of the football team said, you should play rugby. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like I sort of understood it, but I was like, it's a goofy ball. I don't know. And I jumped into that and I was like, oh, it's like football on steroids. Like there's no equipment. So you got to be more careful, and there's no stop. Like you don't stop during rugby. You're just going the whole time. And so I am a guy that I don't like, we were just talking before this, but I don't like sitting down. I don't like sitting still. Calm to me isn't a word I like. And so that was amazing because you just play, just hammer away the entire game. And so, I fell in love with it. And so I played a lot of that. I played sort of club rugby in the summers between high school and then.
Which club?
The Calgary Saracens.
Yeah. Okay. I'm like, I know rugby from like the peripheral, like I knew friends that play, but I wouldn't have watched a buddy play a couple times, but there's played hockey with some guys that played some club stuff, but it was, it's a unique community.
It really is. And it's sort of underground. Like people know about it, but if you're not in it, you're not a part of it. And so, there's a bunch of clubs in town where I live now. The Calgary Canucks play like across the road. And so I watch it with envy. And actually one of the guys that you had on the show, Ryan Smith, is a coach there now. He's a world class rugby player, Hall of Fame guy. So so there's it's still around. You just have to sort of know about it.
And it's there's some of the most talented athletes. Like
I fully agree.
Size, strength, speed,
totally
kind of crazy. Like they have all these attributes that a lot of sports you can't put them all together like that. But these guys are freaks. Yeah,
and they party, which is also a weird thing for high spec athletes.
And
so
and against and with the other team.
That's right.
Which is like even more confusing because they kill each other and then drink beers.
Totally. Yeah. You kick the shit out of each other on the field and then you go and have a beer. Yeah. It's awesome.
What was it? What do you think it was that clicked for you like that experience? Like what was it, that turning point? Football's okay. Playing the whole game is sure. But what else kind of got you about that sport?
I just like the playmaking on the go. Yeah. So the big thing, and maybe that's, it's an analogy to entrepreneurialism, but you can't stop and wait to see what's going to happen or make a new play. So football, it's you sit down, everybody gets together, you decide on what you're going to do, and you try and make a better play than the other team. In rugby, it's you're playmaking the whole time, but it's on the go. So you screw it up, you might get another chance, or the other team gets it, but there's no changeover and wait and put on a new team, or so it's not 5 or 10 seconds of play. It's like you're going for 90 minutes, and so it's that was an amazing world for me. And you usually had someone that was helping choreograph the play to a certain extent, but you had your role, and you tried to stick to your role, but it often would break away again, and you end up in the back team, or you're gonna be in the front team, and you're trying to figure out how to play in that spot. So just like a job or starting a business, you have to play every single position. So it's I loved it. I thought for a long time that I was going to be a pretty decent rugby player. I was tall. I'm 6'3", so that was always like a big step back then for being a pretty big guy. And I always thought, like I've got a chance of this. Like I might be able to play. I got concussions, so I ultimately had to retire. But it was funny actually talking with Ryan Smith. So he's bigger than me, and we talk about rugby. We're having beers, and I was a forward. I was sort of one of the big guys in the pack, and he was a back, and he was sort of out near the wing, and he's like twice the size of me. And so when you talk about that, and you actually look at these pro athletes now, and you're like, I was nothing. There's no chance I had any chance at all. Wasn't that fast, wasn't that big. I was tall, but helps you for certain parts of the game. So yeah, so I've come to realize sort of in my adult years being like, I thought I was good at that sport, but really it was just a lot of fun. So yeah.
Do you, when you're playing, so high school are like interesting years, right? We're trying to figure out ourselves out, what we're good at, what we're interested in. When did you kind of, as you're thinking like, I might have this, I feel like I want to pursue this. Like how long did it take? How long did you dream about that? And then when did it kind of stop?
Well, it stopped abruptly because of these concussions. But when high school finished, like I joined the club. So Saracens before that, you're a junior. So you sort of play, you play in your summer league, but you're not, I wouldn't say you're really part of the team. But then once you graduate from high school, you join the club and you start to get more involved. And at that point I actually hit a point where I was like, maybe this isn't for me. Like maybe it's not the right jam. Yeah. And then I met a couple of guys on the team that sort of took me under their wing. And so I started to get into it more and more that summer. So I would have been 18. And you're partying like crazy when you're 18. And so that's a great place to be because they love to party. And so so that became a pretty cool space. And actually the biggest inflection point was I joined a tour. And so I went on a tour down to Missoula, Montana for a tournament called Maggot Fest. And it's exactly as it sounds. It's just out of control. It's disgusting. And so I went down. It's a sevens tournament. So there's only 7 players on the field and joined the team. So I think it was 20 of us or something that jumped in a bus, worked our way down there, had an amazing time. And part of it was when you arrived, you were handed a mug and you only had one mug and you had as much beer as you could drink as long as you had your mug. And so guys would duct tape it on their hands and play with them. They would, there was things like you'd tie it around your wrist and then, tie it to a bench and hope that nobody stole it. But it really formed a good bond with that team, with that sort of core group of guys. And that's when I realized like this was an amazing sport. And it's just the team, the support from that team outside. So off the pitch, I became really good friends. That's how I got my first job at the Den. So at the U of C, it was run by the Saracens. And so I started university there. First day of school, it's a big, of course, party. And so I'm walking around and the Den had, I don't know, 1,000 people in line. I'm sure you remember this world. 1,000 people. And I was like, I didn't know anybody. I'm walking around campus, walked to the front of the line. And I was like, this is crazy. I need to get in there, but I don't know how. And one of my teammates was standing at the front door and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. He's like, get in here. And he said, but you got to bust a whole bunch of stuff. So go get some pictures and then I'll buy you a beer. And I was like, great, sounds good. And then that was his hiring of me. And so I worked there for 8 years after that. But he just became a family. And it's, a couple of those guys I'm still really good friends with. We've lost some, but we've that bond still exists. So yeah.
By that time, did you figure out that like it wasn't going to be a path you were going to go down, like chase it professionally? Were you aware of that by 18 or were you still kind of?
No, I didn't even know that sort of was there. And back then I don't know the exact timeline of the dates when it started, but there was no university team. So there was no varsity team. So I couldn't join a varsity team. And the Calgary team, which is called the Mavericks, I think they were just forming at the time. So it was just starting to become a bigger sport in the city. So really you played club. And so you played first or second division and you tried to play as well as you could, but then you go from there and try and play on a provincial team and then get to the national team. But it was really just trying to play, have fun at that point in the game. And so it was either 20 or 21. I was retired permanently at 21. But it was around that time where I was like, I'm going to put some more effort into this. I'm going to train in the off season and try and play more seriously. But I was also in between that getting concussions every single week or month. And so that helped its way to decide that career.
Yeah, it forced you.
Yeah.
Did you, when you kind of got like forced out, like when the switch flips to like, okay, I'm going to like train, I'm going to put some more effort into this, have this idea of where I'm going to get to, and then it kind of gets taken away.
Yeah.
What did it do to you at that point?
It was rough. So yeah, I was forced out. I was back then. I'm sure you remember this, but you get a concussion and guys will do the trick like, hey, so how many fingers do you see? And you're trying to just get oriented and it's a joke. And they're like, okay, grab some water and get back out there.
Yeah.
And you just played.
Yeah.
Concussions were just like it was sort of a weak thing. Like if you get a concussion, you're pretty weak. And so I got a bunch. And it was after, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 really good ones. My coach at the time said, you got to go to the doc, like get yourself checked out. Cause I was getting them pretty easily at that point. Cause every time it's a little bit easier to get that concussion. And so I did that, went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you gotta take some time off. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, what do you think? Like, should I take the weekend off? And he's like, no, like a couple of weeks. And I was like, yeah, it's not going to fly, but I'll listen to him. And so I came back to the coach and I said, yeah, I'm supposed to take the weekend off, and then played the next week and got another concussion. And it was in my when I was 21, I think it was that year, but we got a coach from New Zealand that came up. And so he became our club coach. And I took a big bell ringing in April. We have a sevens tournament with the Saracens called Pneumonia Bowl. And so there's usually snow. So you're usually shoveling snow off the field. And I got knocked out really hard. And the coach, we went to practice sort of the next week, and he's like, you can't be here. I was like, I don't know. What are you talking about? Why did I not pay my dues? Trying to figure it out. And he's like, you gotta go get a doctor's note. And I was like, oh no, I got that. It's fine. And he's like, you got to get a new one. And so I went, and my doc was like, you can't, like, you're out for six weeks at least, if not 6 months. And I was like, I just can't. Like, this is the year. I'm going to perform better this year. It's going to be great. And I just need a doctor's note. And he was like, I'm not giving it to you. And so I went back to practice and went to the coach, and I said, he doesn't want to give me one, but I'm fine. I feel good. And he said, no. So he said, you can't play. He's like, I'm pulling you off the team. You can run, like I'll let you run with the team, but you can't do tackling drills. You can't play. You're not allowed to play on the weekend games. And so at that point, it was sort of the end. And so I did some running with them, but I was working out and trying to just stay up. But I realized at that point that it's not getting better. So that was the throw out. I think how did I feel? That was a big inflection point. Like I was trying to figure out what to do at that point. I was still in university, hadn't even figured out what degree I was doing. It took me 7.5 years to get a single undergrad. So it's a master's in your undergrad. Is
that because you were, did you go to university because you just thought it was a good idea, or was it like everyone else is doing it and I guess I'll just go try and fumble my way through it? Yeah,
I actually didn't, I just figured I was supposed to. So my parents both have degrees. And
what'd they do? Sorry.
So my mom was a nurse, and my dad was a lawyer.
Okay.
And so when I was finishing grade 12, and this, if you go back to the Crescent Heights time, that school was not a high performing school. It was a feeder school. There was a lot of interesting characters there. And it was in my grade 12 year, and I went to my guidance counselor, who I'm still friends with today. And I said, so how, he's still around.
What's his name?
Kevin Tonak. He's an amazing guy. Yeah. Hey, Kevin. And I went into his counseling office, and I said, so what do I do? Like, what forms do I need to go to the university? And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, what forms do I need? And he's like, I don't understand the question. I was like, well, I need to go to university. And he was like, oh, well, you've missed that. Like you missed the applications, all that stuff. And I was like, well, how did I miss it? And he's like, well, we don't really do that here. It was very like, he was a little bit caught off guard. And so he like opens up the file cabinet and he pulls out these forms, and he's like, oh, you can apply for U of C with this form, but you're late. So you can apply for late entry. And I was like, well, I don't really understand. And he's like, but you have to have all these courses. Like you have to have your 31 level courses and all this stuff and your maths. And so he like pulls up my transcripts, and he's like, oh yeah, you would have gotten a university for sure. And I was like, well, why? I don't understand. He's like, nobody goes to university. It was sort of a trade high school. Guys went to automotive or mechanics. And so I was one of the very few that went. And so I applied late, got into the general studies, and sort of fumbled my way around for a while.
Did you have an idea? And I guess when you grow up in that kind of household, was it expected that you went? Or was it just like something in you? You're just like, this is the scene. This is the step.
Yeah, my parents didn't push me in, but it was sort of like, just understood it was happening. Like, so university's next year. So I just was like, okay, great. Like
Next step.
I went to junior high and then I went to high school. I didn't do anything. I just went. I'm sure there's paperwork and stuff that my parents did, but I didn't. And so, yeah, it was, I just figured I would continue to U of C. That was sort of
just part of the cycle.
Yeah. I didn't know anything about going to another city or another country for school. That would have been really cool to look into. But I didn't. And so, yeah, so I just went to U of C. I actually ultimately graduated in Lethbridge. So when I sort of got tired of bumbling along,
being there,
I accelerated my last 2 years and graduated through Lethbridge in the end. But yeah, so it was just take school and
because it was just the thing
to do it. Yeah, just keep doing school.
Did you know what you wanted to do? Did you figure it out when you were in there what you wanted to do?
Yeah, by accident. So I started with general studies, but I was looking at engineering. So I sort of figured that's where I was going to go. I took some geology stuff, some chemistry, physics, sort of all the mathy based things. But I was also running a business. And so I was working at the Den more or less full time. And I was also running a landscaping business that I started with a couple of buddies. And I'd sort of taken it over myself. So I was running it myself. I had some staff and that was my summers. And the one thing I struggled with was accounting. So I just didn't know how to do the books. I didn't want to pay someone because it seemed super expensive. And so I was trying to figure out how to do that. I tried to self-learn. This is like dial-up internet days. And so that wasn't a thing. You can't Google it.
Yeah.
And so I was looking through signing up for school in the fall and they had a program called accounting. And I was like, oh, I should take one of those. Then I can learn to do my books. And then that makes a lot of sense. And I actually had thought business school was like, you take business school and then you can get a job as a manager of a restaurant or McDonald's or something like that. And you can do that. And I wasn't interested at the time. I was a bar guy and I was having a lot of fun, but I was also running companies. And so I was like, that's not my program. I'm not a business guy. So I took accounting and realized very quickly that's not bookkeeping. That was accounting. And I was like, and it just unlocked this world for me where I was like, what is this? Like, what is happening? There's this business world that's strategic and entrepreneurial and teaches you all this stuff. And that's when I fell into it. So it was a total accident. I was trying to take a technical class on bookkeeping at a university level and fell in love with it. So yeah.
When the landscape biz, was it, what was the thought process behind that?
Just a way to make money. So
on top of the bar,
on top of the bar. Yeah. It started, I think we started at I was 17, I think.
So it was like
summertime thing. And it was a couple of guys in Rosedale and we knew that people were asking to get their lawns mowed. And it was an aging community at the time. It's totally changed now. But back then there was a lot of sort of older families there. And so we just walked around on one day and handed out flyers saying, we'll mow lawns. And we landed a ton of business.
Remember what the price was back then?
I like $10 or $15 for a mow.
Yeah.
And landed a ton of business. Didn't have a lawnmower, didn't have a truck, didn't have anything. And so we just borrowed our gear from our parents and ran around and mowed lawns for a summer.
Did you push the mowers around? Did you actually find a truck?
Oh yeah, no. We pushed them around. Yeah. So we'd load them into the back of, one guy had a trunk. And so we put in his trunk for a little while. And, but then we started to expand into other neighborhoods because it's really a referral business. So it's like you mow their lawn and they're like, oh, I'm in Tuxedo or Crescent Heights. And so we had to figure that out. So I bought a truck for $800 and figured out how to keep it alive and then got a crappy trailer and sort of added in the fleet from there. So yeah.
How many years did you do that?
Oh man, 5 or 6 years. Okay. Maybe, yeah, about that. Yeah.
17 to your early 20s.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah. And then I ultimately sold it, which was my first. Yeah,
come on.
Yeah. For big money. I sold it for $3,000.
No way. And that was like all the equipment?
All the gear,
the name,
the gear, and the client list. These guys really wanted the client list. So I had a pretty big list at that point. That's what they really were after. And so I sold all the stuff without the truck, which was quite comedic to me.
Your $800 truck?
My $800 truck. And they picked up the company. And so it was sort of that was my first win in sort of running my own business space. And I was like, this is cool. Like I can run these things, have a lot of fun with it with buddies. Most of my buddies were the ones who were mowing lawns. And then I sold it. And I was like, let's do this again.
Crazy.
So, yeah.
So my quick version of that is same thing. I was probably 14, 15. And I would push my dad's mower around Strathcona. Like we lived in this kind of like this like this bay, this like I forget, this circle, and I would just go around. There's like cul-de-sacs. There was 3 cul-de-sacs, and it was like, I don't know. There's probably 60 homes up there.
Yeah.
And I would just walk this circle, like knocking on doors.
Oh, right. And like, I can mow your lawn.
That's it.
I love it.
And it was probably like, I think it was like $15.
Right.
And I did it for a while. And then I went and worked for another guy that started a business, and he had a truck and trailer and stuff. But
Right.
there's no way I ever would have got to a point of growing it and then selling it.
Yeah.
Was it organic for you to do that, or were you being thoughtful?
I posted it for sale. So I put it on like Kijiji or one of those things back then. It was probably Craigslist. Cause I sort of hit this point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Cause your old bar was probably making some money. You're in university.
Yeah. Like I made a ton of money bartending and I was doing, the embassy summers sort of started up at that point. And so I was working really late nights, and then I'd have to mow lawns in the morning. And so I just got to this point of like, I'm tired of it. I just don't want to do it anymore. And so I posted it, and a couple guys, I posted in Olds, and a couple of guys that were finishing the landscaping program in Olds gave me a call, and they came down and picked it up, took the business and just ran with it. And it worked out. It was great. Like I saw the brand working around for a while. And so, yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it was sort of accidental, but worked out really good.
So that little experiment, like business for X amount of time, you find this accounting program.
Yeah.
And then you start working at the bar. So what starts kind of bubbling through there?
Oh man, the bar. So the bar was again sort of a happy accident. But
what'd you do at the Den? Did you start off bussing and then bartending, or what'd you do?
Back then you were a bouncer and a busser.
Oh yeah, right.
So there wasn't like a dedicated busser.
Yep.
So you were a bouncer, and so I was a rugby young kid as a bouncer. And back then it was rough and tumble. Like you were
knocking heads.
You were knocking heads.
Like there was no cameras. There was no
And if you like someone got in a fight that allowed you to take physical approach at them. So so it was so back in the Den. So that was again rugby guys, and so it was just really easy.
It was the heyday back then. Like
it was the heyday.
The Den was a pumping place.
It was huge, and so that back then there was 2 bars at the university. So there's Max's and the Den, and so it was rival bars. The Den was amazing. It was carpeted. I don't know if you were ever in there.
I was there a lot.
Yeah. So DJ Wah was the guy, and
Walter,
DJ Walter, and carpets all over the place, and it was gross and it was dark and it was perfect.
What was the on Thursdays? It was like was there a deal on pitchers?
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
I can't remember what it was, but I think I felt like Thursday were pitchers, and then like Friday was Walter was like doing like retro something or other, and then Saturday, I can't remember what Saturdays, but Thursdays was the thing because I was at the embassy Friday, Saturdays. I think I was at the Den on Thursdays drinking pitchers.
Right. Yeah, and it was like $5 or
it was ridiculous.
I remember one time Tree Brewing, which was like a tiny little brewery at the time.
You remember this?
I specifically remember because it was one of the worst nights ever at the Den. But they showed up and showed up with a truck during the day and went to the GM and said, "Hey, listen, I got like 50 kegs. I got to get rid of them. I'll sell them to you for some insanely low price." And so the GM was like, "Yep, I'll take it." He's like, "Well, how many?" He's like, "I'll take them all." And so we loaded 50 kegs in, and there were 275 jugs. And so for $5.50, you ended up with 2 jugs of beer. And it was disgusting because every single guy was like, "Yep, I'll take 2 jugs." And it was like, they would take 2. They wouldn't get 1. They would be like, they would take 2 right away, sit down on a picnic bench. And the place there was puke everywhere. There was pee everywhere. Guys, it was absolute carnage because there was just so much beer flowing. We did all 50 kegs that night. I'll never forget it. And just out of control. So it was
crazy.
Yeah, but that was Thursday was the jug night, and then I think it was doubles or something was the Friday nights, and then Saturdays were always the cabarets. So that was all the clubs doing their things, and but yeah. So that was it was a big part of my life. 8 years I worked there.
No, so 8 years. So how did starting to work in the nightlife? And then there's something like in that era, there was something very unique about it. I don't think it can be replicated ever again. It might be like cliche to say that, having lived it, but I feel like that was such the golden era of that kind of that industry. Like there was something special about that time.
There was, and I think there was. I believe it was sort of unlocking a little bit more back then. So you could get away with a bit more, and Alberta was getting more open. But it was, it was a wild time. Like you could overfill the bars and you could have fun and, working on the door, you were allowed to have a drink or two.
Yep.
And so there was a lot more tolerance back then. And I think it actually made it function a bit better because you could have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, the world of the warehouse and Night Gallery and the Taz and Republic, all those old places were, they were magical.
Yeah.
And I think if you opened one today, nobody would go because they were so gross and so divey and
death traps.
Also that, exactly.
Like, my dad was a fireman, and so you can imagine like when they're talking about he's thinking about exits. He knows all the shitholes, and he's seen enough chaos that he's like, he didn't say a lot, but there's a couple times he's like, just be aware.
Oh yeah. Night Gallery and the Embassy, two of the best death traps. You go up a set of stairs, there's only one. And then the back door was always plugged with empties and
chaos.
Yeah.
When did you get to the Embassy?
It must have been 2009.
Were you doing both?
I did both. Yeah. Cause the den in the summer effectively closed. And so there wasn't a lot of work. And so I took a job busing at the Embassy the first year. Maybe it was my first year, but I started busing there and just fell in love with that because you had no obligations. It was full of girls. Music was awesome. It was
crazy.
It was crazy. Each room was a different type of music, which again, I don't think you could ever pull off again.
Yep.
Commonwealth has done some interesting stuff with that, but you would never mix like crazy hip hop with poppy music and house music in the same place because the crowds didn't mix. It just didn't work. And so, and somehow it worked. The Embassy was always fairly safe, but
How long did you work there?
Till it closed. So I don't know, 5 years or something.
It was a stretch, right? It
was a stretch. Yeah. Yeah. And so I went from busing to bar back and door guy into bartending on some nights. And I worked through the whole world.
And were you going to university the entire time? Like, cause you were there for fucking 7 years, or it took you 7 years to finish. That's why I felt like when we knew each other back then, I was like, I don't know, the guy goes to school and works at the Embassy. Like it was that kind of black and white and simple.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it was. Like I did 3 or 4 classes per semester. I also I did so many different programs that I was there forever, but I didn't really have a path. And so I was like, this is great. Like there's people love to party. It's young. There's clubs and bars, and the den was amazing. And so I just kept sort of going. And in the summer times we did Embassy, or I'd help at some of the other Concord bars back then and jump into those. And then you were working, there's the No Name bar was always my favorite one, the lounge or whatever it was never called.
Exactly.
But I used to roll in there when I got cut from shifts and come and hang out with you. And it was a long time. I don't know, a long time.
Did you, when you were in it back then, were you okay with just like living that way?
I loved it.
Like, did it ever, nothing ever crossed your mind about like, fuck, I'm still doing this? Or it's like, was there anything in your mind that was like, fuck, what am I doing?
No.
Like school, between like dragging school out, working nights, like living that life. Were you ever concerned about where you'd end up?
I didn't have that career path figured out. So I was just like, I was really enjoying it. I made a lot of money. I had great friends.
Yep.
Tips back then were crazy. And so I just loved it. And so I didn't really have that inflection point. And it's that space for me, like my first job, I was 14, sort of in that hospitality space. And then to this day, now I'm at a brewery and there's a restaurant. And so it's always been part of my world. I've always loved this hospitality stuff. And so no, like it was even, it's actually, so if I take near the end of university, that's when the Hi-Fi Club opened up.
Yep.
And I jumped ship from the den at that point and joined those guys to open up that place. And so I was their first manager or something like that. And so I was like, well, I'm almost done university. I'm going to stay with the Hi-Fi Club. Maybe I'll just do that. Like I'll graduate and I don't know, do the Hi-Fi for a bit. And ended up getting a big boy job, but I kept the club. So I was working at KPMG at the time.
I remember that.
And I was working Thursday, Friday, Saturday at the Hi-Fi. And I was doing 100 hours a week at KPMG and then whatever it was, 30 hours a week at the Hi-Fi, no sleep. But it was one of these things where I was grinding it out on my work day at KPMG, articling and trying to get through that. And then I would get to the Hi-Fi Club and it just became fun and free again. And so I did that as long as I possibly could.
Like a long time.
Yeah, I think it was 3 years.
But like the club life, like,
well, yeah, also
that was a long run.
Yeah, it was a good run. Yeah, yeah. And and so then ultimately I hit a point where I was like, I can't keep both of these up.
Yeah.
I need to focus. And so I ultimately got my CA through KPMG. And so that's when I started to hit this point of like, I can't do it anymore. I can't run both of them.
How old were you when you became a CA? Like after that?
I think I was 29, something like that, 20, somewhere around there.
So yeah. Sorry, what was your job at 14?
I worked for the Stampede, Calgary Stampede. So I was my worst job and first job, which was I was the nacho cheese filler. And so I had these big bags of gooey, whatever it is, oil products, and I would take them into all the places in the grandstand and
load
fill
up
their nacho cheese.
No way.
And I did that for 10 days straight, and it was one of the worst jobs ever. I remember just being covered in burns because the cheese is searing hot, and it was brutal. But yeah, so that was my first hospitality experience.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So after you finish that, when you decide to kind of get out of the nightlife world, KPMG article, and then what starts happening?
So I got my CA.
Did you know what, like this accounting thing? Did you think you were like all in on it, or you're just like, I'm far enough along that I need to do this? Yeah,
again, it was like one of these, like, what's the next step? So I was at the time, I had my partner at the time. Her dad was a CA, and so there was this sort of knowledge of that space a little bit more, and he was a big entrepreneur. And so he was very successful. So I started to learn more about that. And I was working through business school and I'm finishing up university. And I was actually focused on, I did an accounting major because I actually really liked it. And so I was doing accounting and as we're getting into those last years, these accounting firms start courting you. So they start taking you out for beers and fancy dinners. And I never got to go for fancy dinners. So they take you to like a Rodney's Oyster House sort of style place, and you're eating oysters, and I'm like,
how do I do this?
This is a week's pay. just how do I do this also? Yeah. But it was, so I started getting exposed there and I started asking questions, and they're like, yeah, you should do your CA and get your chartered accounting designation because it'll just help propel you into this, the next step. And to me, it was like, oh, it makes sense. I just do the next thing of school. And so I applied for all these firms, ultimately chose KPMG and just jumped into my articles. I didn't even actually consider applying for a different job. I just went down this sort of continuous path and got my CA. I was an absolutely horrific auditor. I was terrible at KPMG. The partners that I worked for, if they watch this, they're going to laugh, but it's, I was super mediocre. Like I didn't like it, and I didn't like working. I didn't like being told what to do every day, like being handed a schedule of things for you to fill out and
like sitting in a suit, sitting in a cube. Here's your tasks.
Yeah.
Go
do this and I'll see you tomorrow. And you sort of work till 2 a.m. and try and get your jobs done. And I didn't like it. And it was very repetitive. And that's part of what I didn't like was it's like, do this bank reconciliation over and over and over for company after company, and drove me crazy. And so when I finished my articles, I was sort of the middle of the pack. I was not a high performer. Got my CA, and that's when I moved to London. And that was 2009, actually. So there's my timeline. 2009.
It's funny how it just clicked.
Yeah.
Here I am.
So that was the big financial crash.
Yep.
And I decided to move to London, and the real one, not the Ontario one. And went to KPMG, and I went to my partner and I said, I'm moving to London. I want to go to KPMG London. And
what was the push to try this?
Just to go somewhere else. So
did you feel like you need to get out of Calgary, or just feel like there was like you're just in a bubble that you wanted to kind of?
Yeah, just try something else.
Yeah.
It was, I've been here forever. And so it was try something else, still with this former partner. And so we decided we were going to do this together and try and find somewhere to go. Picked London. She got a job. And so I was like, okay. So I went to KPMG. They were like, I don't know, 2,500 or 5,000 employees in that city. So I was like, we had 200. I was like, this is going to be so easy. They're just going to transfer me. It's going to be great. went and sat down with my partner, and he was like, yeah, it's 2009. Everything's crashing. We're not doing transfers. And I was like, well, I don't need like a relocation package. I just want to be transferred. Just give me a
desk
job
over there.
And he effectively came back and was like, yeah, no, you're not really good enough. And I was like, oh,
now the truth comes
yeah.
out.
I was like, great. And so, yeah, so I was like, well, I'm going to quit. And he's like, great, give me hand in your papers. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was the end of my, my accounting career, which was great because it wasn't awesome for me. And so that sort of propelled me into trying something else, and then ultimately getting me back into that entrepreneurial space. So I went to London unemployed. I knew one person, and gave it a shot.
For 3 years, for
3 years.
And
yeah.
what was the, did you come back on your own terms, or did you have like a realization, or what was it?
The goal was to come back and retry Calgary. So London was amazing. It's still my favorite city in the whole world. I miss it all the time. Awesome place to be. But it's hard. It's expensive, and you're in tiny quarters. And so, there was conversations around permanence, and I sort of felt at the time, I was like, this isn't, I think we have to give Calgary another shot and see what it's like there. And so decided to come back and landed with my feet on the ground. And it was just super easy. I found
once you got back.
Yeah. You knew everybody. You walked into
everywhere.
Life. Like walked into every bar. Yeah. It was like nothing had ever left. You'd gone for 3 years, but it was just, you just come back. And that's why I love this city, is you can do that. You can disconnect for years and then you just click back in.
Yeah.
And so, so I came back and that was it.
What'd you come back to? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do, or did you come back to something locked in, or did you have a vision?
I ended up getting a job before I got home, which was sort of a happy accident, but it's ended up getting a job running a company called Stone Creek Resorts. So I got back into hospitality. It was, so they own and operate Silvertip in Canmore and Eagle Ranch Golf Club in Invermere. And so I took over running those two places. So I actually got hired as the finance guy, which was funny to me. And within a couple of months, the owner there put me into the operations side as well, because he noticed that I just kept digging in on the restaurant stuff, and we launched a wedding business, and that stuff was super easy for me. So I just got right into it. So I ended up doing the finance and operations for those guys for a couple of years. And so I landed on my feet very, very well. And then went from there. So
did as you're like that gig specifically, you know, when you say like, you're looking at things easily, you start this wedding thing, and you like whatever else you did.
Yeah.
Was there anything in the back of your mind of ever like doing your own thing at this point in time? Where you're like, as you're propping businesses up and helping people, and things are really clicking, you're probably naturally.
Yeah.
Was it ever, or were you just always thinking, okay, where's the evolution of this? Like, what's the next rung to climb?
Yeah, it's that's a really funny one, because it's when we opened the Hi-Fi Club. So Graham and Mike and Pete, so the small town DJ guys, and Graham decided to do this, and they approached me and said, this is what we're doing. And I was like, man, that's super cool. I'll follow you guys anywhere. Let's go do this. And then when it got off the ground, like they opened it with nothing. I don't know what it cost them, but it was nothing. We did everything on a shoestring, and it kicked off, and that place was crazy from the first day. And I remember regretting it from the beginning, because I could have joined them if I'd pushed hard enough, and I didn't, because I was like, every time you see these startups in the bar and restaurant space, it's 95% of them fail. And so it was always this like, I could probably do it, but I'm not going to, because they're just so easy to fail.
Yeah. The risk, like your risk tolerance was.
Like I have a pretty high risk tolerance, but it was always like, I just didn't have that one locked in thing. And I knew I didn't want to run a restaurant. That was never my jam, but bars. So the idea of hosting people has always been my passion, and standing behind the bar and handing out beers to people is like my absolute favorite thing in the world. So it was always this like, could I do that? Could I run it? I looked at a bunch of bars, in this space, who's trying to sell them and trying to get out of them. They're always selling the crappy ones. And you always think, I could probably do that better. But I just never found that one. So it didn't click, but it's always been there, and it's always sort of had that that world. And so But yeah, never pulled the trigger.
Hmm.
I've helped a ton of them. After Stone Creek, I started doing sort of fractional, I called it consulting, but guys called it fractional CFO work.
That's when that switch kind of happened?
Yeah. So after I got fired from Stone Creek Resorts.
For what? Like performance stuff or just like economy things or just being an asshole?
Yeah, maybe. All those things. I had a hard conversation with the owner about what it was going to cost to run the business in the next year. And he didn't like that. And so I said, well, it is what it is. And he said, do new budget. So I came back with a little bit better. And I just said, I'm just being honest. And so that was the end of that. So I got canned out of there. I've been fired a bunch of times. So I'm getting pretty used to it. But it's KPMG, they led me out. He walked me out the door by not firing me, but asking me to go. At Stone Creek, I got fired. And then my last real job, I got fired from as well. So I'm pretty consistent at that. But then the entrepreneurial stuff is always sort of stuck. So I was doing this fractional work. And so I'd go into small companies and they'd have some sort of specific problem. And I always addressed it from a mathematical or a financial perspective. So I understood the operations. You're in this bar forever. Someone says, I got a problem with a restaurant, and I can walk in and say, here's the 5 problems. It's those 5 guys standing there doing nothing. That's your 5 problems, and go figure out a way to get rid of them or make them busier. And so I did that for a long time.
Was that just, that was kind of the start of doing your own thing? Like that was kind of right there. It was kind of this, did you realize you didn't want to go work for somebody, or you just realized that you were able to problem solve and just the idea of touching multiple businesses made more sense? Yeah,
so I think a combo of both. So I'd always sort of run these little businesses, or I'd been doing things on the side, and people were asking. So that was part of it. They're like, hey, can we go have a beer and can you help? Like I don't know what to do. Let's be friends. Like, we've known each other for 20 years. How can I help? How can you help me? And so that was sort of like an interesting niggle in that of like, oh, what's this all about? Like, is there a way I can get a free bar tab out of this? I can, get some free food. And so that was the start, but it's always, doing my own thing was always was in the background. So running a company, you have to do what the boss tells you to do. And, I just found I sort of get bored, or I get into this pigeonhole of like, I need to change. So I need to change the role, or I need to change the company. And so I've always had sort of these 3-year careers, except for in the bar, where I've been in the bar forever. And so,
when you've been fired 3 times. You can laugh about it now because you're in a spot. I'm not saying it's a good spot or a bad spot. You're in a new spot, because I'm not going to put words in your mouth. When you get fired 3 times, what take me back to like all 3 and what you thought about in that moment. And it's I'm really curious to see how, at different points in your life of what you were thinking going through that, because those are tough times.
They're tough.
We can laugh now and fucking whatever, but in those moments, what's actually happening?
I'd love to say it gets easier. It doesn't really. It's but if I think back to, so the first one was KPMG. So I was let out. So that it was insulting to me, because I was like, I can't believe you're not going to just sign the papers. I'm just going to go work there for a while. And so that one was a bit weird, because I was like, it was a bit of an ego hit. I knew I didn't like the job, but I was like,
I know, but you couldn't go on your terms.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like no,
I get it, man.
I'll go over there and then I'll get another job and I'll leave. So that was a bit weird for me, and I was like it gave me a bit of a realization, a big company where you're like, you work for these big, huge companies and you're a number, but they still care. They still worry about it. So that was okay. And I found a job fairly quickly over there. So I got lucky, and part of having, I think, a CA is a blessing, because you're pretty agnostic to industries. So I was able to go there and find a job. The first firing from Stone Creek, that was wild. That one like broke me. Like full blown panic.
Because you had more responsibilities at that point in your life, do you think? Or was it just like?
No, like I had a house and mortgage and stuff, but it was more just like I didn't see it coming. That was a big thing. So it was like out of left field. I was sort of getting into my career where like I was having harder conversations. I was still pretty new into that space, but I was the top, I was the number 2 in that company. And so I was having to have hard conversations with the owner, and the owner was the guy running the entire organization. And so coming back to him after 3 years of effectively setting a budget and then failing on it, and then trying to, and I was able to improve the company quite a lot, but you had to invest in this company. It's golf courses. They're tricky businesses. And so I went back and I just said, I'm just being realistic. Like, this is what it's going to look like. You have to understand you're going to be putting in some capital to keep this thing alive. And I thought I was actually doing a great job being like, okay, now you can plan. Like, and if I can outperform, that's a win.
Yeah.
I wasn't compensated to outperform, but it was just like, I'll do my best to make this very profitable, but I think you're gonna need some cash. And right there on the spot, he just said, well, I'm just gonna let you go. So, left, and I couldn't believe it. Like, I didn't know, I didn't really know that was even possible at the time. Like, I was like, you got a job, you work. Like, working in the bars, I never got fired from a bar job. It was, you just always had to work. And if that bar was closing or wasn't busy, they'd hand you a job somewhere else. They're like, you're at the embassy and it's slow on a Friday, and they're like, can you just run across the road and, can you bus at Merck tonight, or can you, go to the Republic, and like they're getting run over, and it's like, yeah, of course, just go did it and get in the corporate world, and it mattered a lot more. So yeah, it was a knock for sure. Scared the crap out of me. So then at that point, I'd sort of been having these light conversations about helping other companies. And I got very fortunate. I actually picked up a contract, sort of through a close network, but I picked up a contract with the Tsuut'ina Nation. And they were working on the Grey Eagle at the time. So they had the casino open. They were opening the event center. So I know that space, and opening the hotel. And I knew that space. And so I picked up a contract to help them get that launched. And so it was really a strategic overview, and got those two places off the ground. So that was really a launch pad for doing this world, which was like, man, I can come in, I can give all this advice that I know about these spaces, like concerts and hotels and restaurants, and help from outside. And then once it gets going, I move on and do the next one. So it allowed me to sort of keep my, I don't know, I don't think I have ADD, but it's something like that, where I need to sort of constantly be looking around like a squirrel and finding opportunities. And so that allowed me to have all those opportunities. And so there was times I had way too many, and I was buried and trying to keep up with these clients, but there's other times it slowed down, and I was able to look at other things that I could do myself. And so I was doing that as well. And so that was that second firing, first real firing, was a good inflection point for me to sort of learn to be self-sustaining and look at, all you have to do is just do it. I've never had concern about money. I've always thought you can make money. It's not hard. And if I had to, I'd just go back to the hi-fi or go bartend somewhere. I can do that.
Totally.
It'll be fine. And so I've never had that concern. And so for me, it was just, I just have to find the next thing. And so that spurred off the real, I would say, maturing of my entrepreneurial journey of getting into that stuff. And then sort of did that. I did that really from 2012 until 2019.
So it was a run.
Yeah, it was a big run. And I sort of worked for myself for that whole period. And that's when I launched Pedal Pub.
In 2019?
2019.
So you and I would have, I started my business in October of 19? No, October of, it'll be 5 years coming up. Yeah, October 9. Yeah.
Yeah, 19.
Yeah, so 19. Right. So that's when you and I started to cross paths again, because I was like,
that's right,
trying to, exactly the way other people were asking you, like, hey, I feel like you might have some answers here. You might be able to give me some insight.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I did. I'm like, this guy, he's smart. I should probably go talk to him. So that's when we met over at that coffee joint in over by Ogden.
That's right. That's right. And it's funny because, I look back at your career path. I don't think we were super close for a long time, but I watched your career path the whole time. And I always thought it was amazing what you did with like getting into FranWorks and all that stuff you did, and then the hockey stuff. And I always thought you were doing the same thing, where you sort of found your own path and you figured out how to make it work. And some of them were jobs and some of them were contracts. And then I remember when you took your brand of your face. And I always thought that was cool. I was like, you're actually using your face as a logo. And I was like, that's like a big swing and move.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting down and you were like, yeah, I think I'm going to go after this. And I was like, I think I said to you, aren't you already doing that? Like, isn't that what you're already doing? And you were like, well, no, I'm starting a company. And I was like, do it, go for it. Yeah. And I think I even said, I want to hire you, but I'm way too poor.
Yeah, exactly. That was word for word.
Yeah. I was like, I'll refer you to 10 guys. I'll do that. But and I was like, one day we'll work together.
And that's why it's funny. It's funny how like you have those moments, right? Like where it's like you said, we were disconnected for a long time because just going in different directions and different circles. But then anyways, it comes back to that. Pedal Pub in 2019.
So,
are you all in on this like entrepreneurial journey? Like being like the fractional guy, like getting contracts here and there, and then fucking Pedal Pub.
Yeah. Like, so at that point in the game, there was always opportunities to get into sort of the edges of these things. So when I would consult for a company, and then there was opportunities to invest.
Right.
And so I could either trade time for equity, or I could take some of my capital and put it in. And so that really started to show me all of these little companies in Calgary that I consulted for, and I saw like, well, this is done well, and this isn't done well, and I know how to fix that. And so I'd see these things, and that's really where it started to allow me to look at this a lot better, because I got to see the inner workings of all these really, really cool companies, half of who have been on your show. And so that was an amazing sort of step into that world. And the Pedal Pub thing, it had sat in the back of my mind since 2009. So my first year in London, I was out wandering around bars, and in London, the most amazing thing to me was you go into a bar, grab a pint, and then you can leave. You just walk out the front door. You can stand outside on the curb. You can even take your pint and just walk to the next bar. And often they wouldn't even mind if you took the glass. And so you just take the glass to the next bar, you put it on the counter and get another pint, and you can walk around the city and drink. And I thought that was the most amazing thing. And I couldn't believe that, this place that's 1,000 years old allows this. And we're in, I look back in Canada and Calgary, and I'm like, could you imagine if you could just walk around on First Street and have a pint and move between spaces, and how functional that would be, or 17th Ave. And I always looked at that and I thought, there's got to be more things in London that are like this. And I was hanging out, drinking on the street, and this thing, you sort of hear it wooing from a while before, and it gets louder and louder. And then this weird contraption of like 8 people facing each other with a bartender in the middle and a driver rolling a bar through sort of one of the hot spots of London. And I was like, I stopped everything. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is a moving bar. This bar is, these guys are pedaling. They're driving this thing with their pedal power. There's someone standing in the middle serving wine and beer to people, and there's someone driving it. And they would pull up to a bar, and they would stop, and they'd be blasting music, and we're all standing outside drinking out in the open. And these people are paying money to drink out in the open while they pedaled around on this sort of showy machine. And I was like, I gotta get on this. And I walked up and I was like, how do I get on this? What do I do? And they're like, oh, you have to book it. Like, you have to book it with a group of people. And I was like, okay. And I literally went back to the group and I was like, we got to book this thing. And so I walked up and I was like, okay, well, let's book it. And they're like, no, you have to like book it. And I was
slow down, dummy.
And so went and booked it, and then jumped on this thing. And I must have ridden it 5 or 6 times in London. And I couldn't get my head wrapped around for the longest time of, I'm paying this money to go on this tour to drink in public. And I thought, if I can do this in London, where I could just stand on the side of the street and drink, pay £2 back then for a pint of beer, or pay £100 and get on this rolling bar. I was like, there has to be something here. There's a secret. This is super cool. And I thought, Canada, the US is always 5 years behind Europe. Yeah. Canada is always 10 years behind Europe, or 5 years behind the US. And I thought, this is going to happen. It's going to be the future. I want to be that guy. I'm going to figure out how to do this thing. And so 10 years later, it was actually late 2017 is when I started to really percolated on it a lot more. And the US had 10 locations. I'd been to a couple of them. Portland was creating this cool hub. And I was like, oh, it's coming. Like, this is happening. There was none in Canada. And I was like, it's time. This is the thing. And so 2018 Stampede, I'm at Stampede and I've decided to do this thing. And I'm chatting with a friend of mine from university. She's having a company party that she let me sneak into. And we're having beers at the rodeo. And I was like, I'm doing this thing called pedal pub. You ride around on these big beer bikes and I've figured out where to buy them and I'm going to do this thing. And she's like, you got to stop right now. And I was like, what's the problem? And she's like, I'm getting my husband. And so she runs away, comes back, brings over her husband, this crazy guy named David Scabar, who everybody knows, you know him, this wild guy. And he's dressed up like an Amish guy. So he's decided to go to Stampede looking like an Amish guy. And he's had, I don't know, 40 beers at this point. It's late afternoon at the rodeo. And she's like, my friend Lindsay, his wife, says, James is launching these pedal things and you were going to do that. So you guys now are going to do it. And that was all she said. And then she just walked away and we were like, hi. And we sort of shook hands and then just hashed it out. So we went from the rodeo to Nashville North, continued the conversation, drank way too much, and then said, well, let's meet up and talk about it when we have a minute to be a little more sober and not hungover. So then from that point on, we started talking about it. And Dave had a very similar story. He went to Nashville, which is where everybody sort of believes that this pedal bike mecca is. He did the same thing. He was out in Broadway and he's hanging out and this bike shows up and pulls over and he runs out and goes, how do I get on this thing? And he said, well, you got to book it. So he's like, how much money do you need? I'll give you any sort of amount of money. And so got it booked, did the tour, and he's like, this is the best thing I've ever done. So we collided and decided to go after this thing. So that was late 2018 and got it launched in 2019. And so did a bunch of research and found the safest bikes we could. And that ended up being in Amsterdam. And then we started working on brand names and trying to figure that out. And the brand Pedal Pub made the perfect sense. Unfortunately, it was taken in the US. And so we thought, well, maybe we can just use it up here. We'll just steal the brand and that'll be no problem. It's never that easy. But we're thinking about doing that. And we had a couple other ideas. And then I actually reached out to Pedal Pub because the bikes that I wanted, the owner of the bike manufacturing company, which is Amsterdam, said, you have to talk to these guys in Minneapolis. And I was like, why? And I was like, oh, maybe they're a dealer. Maybe they're selling them through. So I reached out and they said, yeah, we're franchising this company. And so the only way to get these bikes is you have to own a franchise, a Pedal Pub franchise. And I was like, got on an airplane the next day, flew down there. I was like, I need to know more about this, what you're talking about. And they were like, well, we're just starting, but we're going to let you use the name and you get to buy these bikes. And I was like, you just solved all my problems. I have the safest bikes in the world. So it's perfect for what we're trying to achieve. They're big, they're burly, they're party animals. They're the ones in Nashville and the best brand. It's like the rollerblade of moving beer bikes. And so we negotiated that out. There was no franchise in Canada. So I was able to convince them that was a good idea and took that on. And so launched in 2019, we opened up Calgary location and then went from there. And so we've now sold in 4 other places across the country. And then in May, we actually just opened up in Edmonton as well.
Crazy.
So yeah.
And that's where I kind of like, that's where, after all of a sudden Costello pops up on the radar again, it's fucking Pedal Pub. That's where I was like, oh.
Right. Yeah. We got some pretty good media for that one because it was.
Yeah. It went up like, for all the rules that you guys worked with the government to kind of make happen.
That's right.
And it was like the first thing up here that was like that. So
yeah,
there was a lot of media around what you were up to.
Yeah. And we had to do a lot. Like, we went to the city and we're like, this is what they want to do. And they're like, never heard of it. Don't know how to fit you in. Went to the province and said, we want to put e-assist on these bikes so that they're pedalable. And they were like, you're not a limo. You're not a pedicab. You're not, we don't know what you are. So you don't fit. And they went to the province and said, hey, we want to have beer on these things. And they were like, you're really funny. That's cute. And so we had some pretty big hurdles to climb and we just one by one started picking them off. David Scabar was actually the guy that really was able to figure those things out. And as he was sort of figuring out the government stuff, our third sort of founder with the company, a guy named John Reed, joined on at that time. And so he was really good at sort of orchestrating the people. So he was getting all the people figured out. I was figuring out the strategy, and Dave was convincing somehow bureaucrats that we were a good idea.
Smooth operator.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I still don't know how he does it. But
you get into a vortex. I've only hung out with him a few times, but it's pretty easy going. Like,
oh yeah. You can talk to that guy for hours. So yeah, he's and then we got it going. And so 2019 we launched, and sort of mid-season 2019, the AGLC granted us sort of an amendment to the handbook and said, yeah, actually you can fit within these 2 paragraphs, and they let us have beer on these things. And so off we went. So yeah, five years later now.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's between doing the consulting, Pedal Pub, you're just kind of like, you were on your path. You're kind of doing your own. And was it a comfortable spot? Like did you enjoy kind of making your decisions, being accountable to partners, but like essentially, you're your own boss?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah. And so that was, 2019 was a really cool launch platform. So my consulting stuff was going really well. I was actually carving out some work to some other people. So I was able to like land business and then give it to someone to do, which was the dream when you're doing this stuff. And so I was able to do that a bit. I was still doing a lot of consulting, but Pedal Pub was launching. I wasn't making any money, but it was launching. So I had all sort of these ducks lined up. And it felt really good. And then I remember in 2020, so we got through our first year, we scaled up, we got a whole bunch more bikes into the country, and we're getting ready to really go for it in 2020. And so Dave, John, and I all decided that Dave and I would go full time. So we would actually take this company on. I would actually wind up the consulting, and we'd go after this thing. And so we did. And so that was like February of 2020. And then March hit. It was actually really February, but March hit and the whole world closed. And so this novel idea of packing 15 people onto a fairly tight space, riding around drinking, was a really bad idea all of a sudden. So COVID crushed us. And so it was this really cool, like climb the roller coaster and getting ready for the fun ride. And then
you guys were, you had it all, right? Like it was tiger by the tail thing, because you guys had all the attention on you.
It was awesome.
It was right there.
Yeah, we figured we were going to start printing money, was what we were at. And then it collapsed. And so I had to sort of quickly unwind, start consulting again. I was trying to pick up the clients I'd said no to. And of course they've moved on. And during COVID, everybody was like, I can't invest. I can't spend money on you because I don't even know if I'm going to be open, and bars are closed, breweries are closed, all these things were shut. And Dave then went and did his own thing. So he had to back down. So we really went down to like this absolute bare bones minimum to survive, and spent our focus on, again, convincing city, province, certain governing authorities that we were okay. And so we were, we'd say, well, I know bars aren't allowed to have more than 2 people together, but we'll space people out, and we're outside, so it doesn't matter. And so we did a lot of working on that, and tried to find that happy place to keep the thing alive. And we got lucky. Again, I think Dave was instrumental in this, but to keep us going. And so we had plexiglass, like hockey boards between people and between the drivers and the bartenders. And we weren't allowed to sing for a while, which was a great one for me. I thought that was hilarious that was the transmission, but so we just had to survive. And so that's what I did. And so that's, I found another way. And so I ended up ultimately taking a full-time job to make it through COVID. And it was a client. And so it was a really cool client that I had in 2019. They asked me to join full-time back then. And I was like, this doesn't work for me. Like, I've got stuff and I'm doing things, and I'm not going to do that. They're based in Florida as well. So it's like, this doesn't make sense, but thanks. And then they asked me to come back and help again. And so I came back and helped again. And then I was like, it's a pretty cool company. Like, I really like what they're doing. And COVID was scary. And so I was like, maybe this is something I do. And so I took on, I think it was half-time to start, which immediately became 3/4 time or 110% time.
All the time.
And then it became 75%, and then it went full-time. And so during that period, I was, I gave off Pedal Pub to our team to run, and we hired an amazing girl named Marina, and so she's still there. She became our general manager,
Cool.
and then we all like slide of the desk to this thing to try and keep it alive. And so I was commuting, which was insanity through COVID, down to Florida and back just to keep the lights on. But again, to me, this was like, I need to make money. I'm going to go make money. And so I just was able to do that. Whereas if it was a job, I don't know what I would have done. So yeah.
Which is interesting to hear, because I think a lot of people that listen to the show are probably sick of me saying this, but like the highlights, it's like people see or hear this story of like, you're accomplishing certain things, but lurking behind all that are these scenarios, where it's like, I have to figure this out quickly or else everything that I was up to is over.
That's right. Yeah. And like the analogy to me is like a duck on a pond.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks you're just floating along.
Yeah.
It's going really well. Oh, you've got all this work. You're
Yeah.
going to Florida. You're doing all these cool things. But under the water, your feet are scrambling. You're just trying to keep moving. And I think that's a lot of the entrepreneurial journey as well. Is it's not, you don't just be an entrepreneur and it's easy and everybody makes money. It's you're constantly pivoting, constantly struggling and flailing and trying to keep it alive. So yeah.
How do you manage that? What's your attempt at managing that?
When I figure it out, I'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly. We'll write a book.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What's your move? What's your move to kind of like, the duck picture is perfect, but what's your move to kind of keep it in check or keep it just moving in a direction?
I don't even know if I have an answer to that. To me, it's just keep moving. Like it's, I use this analogy and some people hate it, but it's to me, and this is a personal thing, but if you're not moving forward, so to me, if I'm not growing and developing and doing the next thing, I feel like I'm dying. Yeah. So like, if you're not going ahead, you're just falling behind and you might as well finish off. And I still don't to this day picture retiring. I don't have this like idea in my mind of like, I'm going to make some money and retire and
shut it all down.
Golf or something.
Run.
Yeah, I'm going to run more than I do today. And so it's, I just don't see that. And so for me, it's, you just keep moving, keep going. And so, this gets in your way. You got to get around it and keep going and keep flailing, trying to find that, that comfort. So yeah, I think it's just, you just can't give up. You got to always hustle. And I think that's something that I've met with when I was doing the major consulting through those formative years, the entrepreneurs that I spent time with, like they were in that. They were constantly worried about getting, making payroll next week or making rent or finding that first sale. And they just figured it out. The guys that did it and they just kept going. And so that's always sort of been in my mind is you gotta keep going. If you don't go, you're dead. So yeah.
Makes sense. So after you take this job, fired.
Fired.
Correct?
Yeah, I got fired from that one.
This is number 3.
That would be number 3. Yeah, that's right.
Number 3. What does that one feel like?
That one hurt. Yeah, that was an interesting one. So that was last May. Yeah. So it was just over a year ago today. Yeah, it's still fresh. Yeah. That company. So I, because of COVID and having to travel down there, they became a second family. I always called them my Florida family, family-owned operation. Super cool company. And we really grew it from when I joined almost nothing to being a very, very powerful company now. Yep. And so I really became like I was ingrained in it. It was I worked my ass off. Super long hours. Yep. They were on Eastern time, so I'd get up super early, but then I'd work Mountain time. So I was doing these huge stretches. So it was a big part of my life. And so to be fired out of that one, and again, it was like out of left field or right field this time. I don't know, out of the baseball diamond.
Some field.
Yeah, some field. That's right. That was rough. There was like bits and pieces that I'd been sniffing at, and we were going through a huge transition. And so there was bits where I was like, I probably don't have a huge, long tenure here, like further. And we were pretty upfront about like, if we hit this, I'm probably not the best CFO for this company. And we would talk about it, but it was sort of hit that to me, it was a year early. So yeah, it caught me. It was harsh. Yeah, it was, I took the summer off. I think we spent more time that summer
Yep.
hanging out and chatting, but I took the summer off and just tried to regroup. And so that company, one of the things I learned the most about that company was scale. So it was a US company. The way people raise money is different down there. It's much more abundant. And so we took this company from a very, very small company and we 100x'd it in roughly 3 years. And so to watch that scale and that growth really helped. And then along the way, I did what I was doing with other companies, but I invested. And so I got pretty lucky with that. So when I got axed, I at least had a bit of a cushion to land myself on. And so it was the 1st of May. I spent 60 days exercising and trying to figure out what to do and regrouping. I leaned into Pedal Pub a whole bunch more, trying to figure out what's going on there. And if I could help, maybe it's time for me to get back into it. And I was like, at that point I realized that my team was way better than me. And so there was zero chance. And it was funny because they, both John and Marina were really nice to me. And they're like, yeah, of course you can come fill bags of ice. But then get out of the way. Yeah. Like this is not your world. That's it. That's my high water mark. Filling bags with ice. And so I spent a couple of months just trying to figure out what to do. And that's when I started to reach out into the network again and started to see, should I start consulting? What should I do? Should I start a company? What's my space?
It's a weird spot.
Super weird spot.
To be like, just to be later in life. More responsibilities, all these things. And then to go through that, like you're not really, when you don't expect it, I'm sure that's uncomfortable. And B, you just can't really be prepared for it. Like you're kind of, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like
totally.
Twists you up. And the reason I'm on you this a little bit right now is because had a dude on a couple episodes ago, Gilmore Juno.
Okay.
Speed skater.
I don't know, but
Speed skater, you'll remember this story. 2014, he qualified for an event and gave up a spot to his fellow Canadian, this guy, Denny Morrison.
Yes.
Remember this story?
Yes, yeah.
And I don't remember what, if it was the 500,000, but he qualified and Denny fell and he gave a spot.
Right.
That guy.
Right. Yes,
so
okay.
I had him on the show.
Oh man, okay.
And he was, he retired after 3 Olympics at 32.
Okay.
He's now, a couple years out. Been trying to, his retirement is like kind of like getting fired, right? Like, you're kind of tied to this thing. Your identity might be intertwined with your job, maybe, but you're in this thing and then it ends. And him and I had this conversation about like, whenever it happens at whatever age, it doesn't make it easier. And you can't be more prepared as the older you get, but shit happens at whatever age.
Right.
And the only option is to like move forward.
Keep moving forward. Yeah, that's right. And athletes, like that's a really interesting one. That's obviously not me, but when a pro athlete retires, like they have to start again. Yeah. Like it's not like, okay, I'm done speed skating. Now I'm going to take a different speed skating job. Yeah. It's like that's over. Yep. Maybe you can coach a bit, but it's probably not the path you want to take. And so you have to find a job. So I think it's even worse. For me, it's just like, okay, I got to pivot and figure something out.
Or with stress though, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like there's like, as the days go by, and weeks go by, you're like, oh, nothing's changing. Like, I feel like I'm talking to the right people, but why is nothing hit yet?
That's right.
That patience or whatever it is, like waiting for the right thing is stressful.
For sure. And it's amazing because athletes are one of my favorite people to hire to sort of tangent to that, but their drive, self-motivation, like pro athletes are incredible with that stuff because they pick up and keep going. Like you have to train, you're going to train. You just figure it out. So, totally. But you have to keep moving forward and figure out what your next thing is. And so mine, I ended up doing Tool Shed, going full picture here, but it's Tool Shed was, again, I don't know, I call these happy accidents, or I don't know if it's a happy accident yet, but we'll see.
You said it a few times, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you give that any thought? Like why you're able to either harness that or put yourself in a spot that allows you to leverage that?
I think it's positional. I think this is one of the things I love about Calgary, and I'll pull away because the last question is
you're a smart
where
guy.
It's going to come together.
You're fucking smarter than a lot.
But it's this city you can do that. You can go out and say, you go to an event and you say, hey, I'm James, this is what I've done. And I'm just trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And this is what I've done before. And it becomes this like, hey, you got to meet Jeff, or you got to meet David, or you got to meet this guy. Do you know this person from here? And you go, actually, I do. I should reach out to him. Thanks. That's a great idea. And this city is amazing for that. And it's very entrepreneurial, this city. And so everybody sort of has felt it or had it. And maybe not everybody's been fired, but they've felt loss, and they've sort of picked up from that.
Yep.
And so that's what's amazing about it. And so I'd say happy accident is I am extroverted. I love to meet people and talk. And so the happy accident being I go out and meet people, and I will talk for hours and want to learn about people and what that's all about. So it becomes a happy accident because you're around at the time that shows up. But I've purposely put myself there to find that car crash.
Which is interesting. So, like to say, like, it's almost like adding the word purpose into happy accident. It's like purposeful, happy accidents, and then all of a sudden it's like,
right.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
Because, it's not,
right.
Because I think what I'm alluding to is some people just think it's like luck, like pure luck, which as you run through that scenario, it's not just that lucky.
I don't think luck, like I think there is some luck in business. I think that's part of it, but you have to get there. You have to make the luck, or you have to be positioned to allow for that luck.
Yep.
So
agreed.
you can't just sit back. Again, it's keep moving forward, and you might trip over it, but be there.
So Tool Shed.
Yeah. So Tool Shed again was a client. So 2019, I met up with a guy named Graham Sherman. He's the founder of the brewery. I met up with him. He had sort of gone through a thing with his co-founder, wasn't having a super awesome time with him, and he wanted to figure it out.
Yep.
And David Scabar was good friends with him, and he said, "Man, you got to go for a beer with this guy." This was like full blown pedal pub at the time, and so I was like, "Well, I'm not really doing that, but I'll meet with a brewery guy like that. I'll go drink beer. This sounds like a great idea."
I got this.
Yeah. Worst case, I drink some beer, and so met up with Graham Sherman, sat down, and he'd been going through this issue, and he was like, "What do I do? Like, what do I do with my partner? How do I manage that?" And I was like. So we went through some of his documents, and ultimately he had a clause in his shareholder agreement it's called a shotgun clause. And it's exactly how it sounds, is you sort of load up a shotgun, you load up an offer, and you fire it at your business partner, and your business partner can either fire it back and buy you out, or you get to buy him out.
Yep.
And so we found this in there, and we strategized and figured out how to raise the money and what that looks like, and what the optimal number was, so that his partner wouldn't buy him out.
Yep.
He really wanted the brewery, so it had to be big enough that he wouldn't buy him out, but it had to be small enough that it's a fair price. And so we worked through all this stuff and ultimately figured it out and put out the offer. He accepted it, so he didn't counter shotgun. He took the shot. And we raised cash and bought the brewery. And so at that time, I loaned Graham some money to help get through it. I was a huge believer, and ultimately was supposed to become equity. So I was like, I'll become a shareholder when the time is right, but just get your thing going. And so I helped him with that. And then I effectively disappeared and just went back to what I was doing. And so he picked up this company. We did all the due diligence, all this stuff. And pretty much the day that the keys got handed over, he got surprised with a whole bunch of gremlins that he didn't see were coming. And so there was debt that he didn't know about. And there was all sorts of nastiness, customers or vendors that he thought he had amazing relationships with that were strained or dead. And so you pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I need some cans to put some beer in them." And they'd say, "Oh yeah, we'll never sell you cans again." And he's like, "I thought we were great." And he's like, "Not in the last year. When you've been gone, it's gotten really ugly." And so he was sort of met with problem after problem. And so he was able to start to right that ship, put in a guy to help him. And then COVID hit him. And so 75% of his customers closed, in March of 2020. And so his business effectively ceased as well. He limped his way along. He got some amazing guys who invested and either loaned him money or invested in the company as equity guys, and so they were able to sort of weather through that storm. And all the way along, Graham would say, "Hey, can we go for a beer? I got this idea." And so we'd get together for this idea that he would come up with. And I was always like, this isn't, I don't know if this is a good idea. And he, generally speaking, would come up with a good idea. Like it was like, that's actually a pretty good thought of how to get through COVID. One of them was, he was like, "Okay, hear me out." He's like, "Restaurants are closed. They're all going out of business. I think I should open a restaurant." And I was like, really bad idea. Restaurants are a terrible idea.
At the best of times.
At the best of times, yeah. Let alone when you can't open one. And he goes, but listen to this. I just went to an auction and I bought this kitchen equipment, $20,000 worth of equipment, and it cost me $90 because nobody's bidding on it because we're all closed. And so why don't I just start buying equipment and then I'll just open a restaurant? I was like, yeah, it's not really that easy. And he's like, yeah, it is. It's easy. I'm just going to go do that. So he went and did that. So he launched his little restaurant business inside the brewery, and then I'd go away for a bit, and then he'd come back. But ultimately, just a year and a half ago, I guess, he called with pretty dire news that the debt had gotten too big, and they called his debt, and they swept his bank accounts, and so he was out. It was over. The brewery was done. And so I helped him out. I gave him a little bit of angel cash to get him through it, to make payroll, which was, I thought at that time it was Christmas time, and I was like, you can't not make payroll. So I did that. And then I said, we'll just figure it out. Like, you go save your company, and then we'll figure it out at that point. And I went away for another couple of months. I was still working full time, and I was like, I can't help you. Like I can't get in. I'm busy. I'm in Florida. And then so that he sort of worked his way along, and then I got fired in May. So I was able to open up my eyes a little bit more. He actually worked through, at that point, was trying to sell the brewery. And I was like, this is a cool idea. Maybe I'll buy the brewery. Like, this would be neat.
Back to your roots.
Yeah. Like, go full circle on, would you ever buy a restaurant or something? And no, never buy a bar. Terrible idea. And so I actually offered on it. So I put an offer in. It was the debt holders that were sort of holding the company ransom. And so it was their decision. I thought I put together a great offer. I thought it was really fair. I was going to save a bunch of the debt holders and carry them into equity. And it failed. So I didn't get it. And so that was sort of June-ish time around then. And then Stampede came. So I spent Stampede having what I do best, which is networking and socializing and drinking beer and having a great time. And then sort of came out of that, and I had some interesting opportunities percolating because of these happy accidents that happened in the city. And then August sort of came along. It was late July, and the brewery, so I didn't win the bid. No one else had bid, and it was at the end. It was at the end of the line for this place. It was done. And so I had time. So I said, well, guys, I'm coming in. I'm gonna step in. I'm gonna take a much more aggressive approach. So I joined as a CEO as a volunteer. So I said, I'm gonna do this, but I want to get paid. I knew right away I wasn't gonna get paid, but I was like, I'm gonna step in. I'm gonna right this ship. I know exactly how to do this. I've been doing this forever. I know exactly what it's gonna take. So reluctantly, the guy that was running at the time stepped back. I stepped in beside Graham, and sort of slashed and burned, and we got really aggressive on this brewery. And as I sort of worked through a new strategy and tried to power this thing up, I spent a very imbalanced amount of time meeting with every single debt holder and every single shareholder that wanted to meet me for an hour or 10 to talk through what's going on. And it was like, guys, we're in big trouble. This is what it looks like. I don't know what, I'm not sure what I can tell you, but here's what I want to do. I want you guys to, and so to all the debt holders, I said, I want you to volunteer to convert all your debt to equity. And this is what it's going to look like. And I built together a big financial structure for that, built together a strategy. And then I said, I'm going to do this. You're going to get a part of your investment as equity. And then the equity guys will be diluted down. So they're going to get less equity. And then I'm going to raise a bunch of money, and then everybody's going to get less equity, but we're going to be alive. And so my pitch was, we're going to survive. We're going to make it. You're going to have less of something, but it's better than nothing. So that was my pitch, and did that for 4 months. And we got into December. I took it to vote or not necessarily a vote, but a conversion.
Yep.
So I sent out documents to every single debt holder and I said, you have to fill out this form and convert. And if we don't hit a threshold, we're dead. We're going to be done. And I was pretty optimistic. I thought we had it. We were like right there on this sort of threshold of some debt can carry, but we need everybody to convert. And ultimately it didn't work. So I failed. And so the debt didn't get converted. It all sort of unwound. I then took off, left the city for a week just to get to the country and disappear and regroup because I was like, oh, I guess that's that. And then coming to January, I did what I had promised all these guys, which is you're either going to have a part of something or you're going to have nothing. And we have to go into insolvency. And so January 2nd or whatever that first Monday was, called up all these groups we've been talking to. So lawyers and accountants and receivers and trustees and powered this thing up. And I took it into what they call a Division 1 proposal. And so that day was the day that I took a full-time job with them. So I actually went on employment salary and I invested a huge pile of money to pay for this proposal. So what we did was we took it to court and we said, we as management would like to propose to come into a new business without this debt. And so that was the start of what the fuck am I doing with a brewery?
Which is like an ugly way to get into it, right? Like and you've never experienced any of these things, I'm sure.
Never.
So learning on the fly.
Yeah.
Underwater.
Yeah. Ton of angry people. Yeah. Like 100 angry people. It wasn't bank debt. It was all private people. So it's all Calgary, mostly Calgary people that had invested 50 or 100 grand and believed in this brewery. And I had to have these conversations, give them optimism and faith that we were going to make it through, and then get to the other side and say, sorry, it didn't work. And now I took it all away from them. And so, it was terrifying, overwhelming, huge anxiety level. It was not an easy process. It was public, which was also like an interesting thing. And so part of it was you put in this proposal, and then behind the proposal, so this idea of taking it into insolvency, wiping away the debt, clearing off the equity, and then starting a new business, you include with it what they call a stalking horse bid. And this, which is, I think, the coolest name ever. I was like, I want to be one of those. I want to be a stalking horse, whatever that is. And so that was me bidding on purchasing the brewery. And so you take it into insolvency. I financed that insolvency, but then at the same time I said, I'm going to buy the brewery. And this all goes into the public record. And so it also became this thing of all these people that I tried to get to join me. And then they're like, well, what's that? Like, what do you mean you're buying the brewery? And I was like, yeah, but guys, it's the same strategy I had before. I said, come along and I'm going to do the same things, but now you guys can't come along and I'm going to do it again. So why don't you again, come along? And so it was a wild fight. It took a couple of months. We didn't close the deal until May. So May 3rd was the final day.
And catching you at a time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is amazing. This is so fresh. Still have the scars. I'm still bleeding, but it's a lot of the guys understood. There was definitely some angry people for sure, which wasn't fun. But I tried my best. But we have a lot of investors in the new brewery that were original investors before, and they said back then, well, I believed in it back then. I believed in the conversion. I believe in it now, if not more, because there's no debt. So they've sort of re-upped. And so now we're at this point where we've got some amazing, huge advocates, huge ambassadors for the brewery. We've rebuilt, we've come out of court. We're now sort of free running, and we're off. Our stalking horse is off to the races. So we're,
Which, all that to this, right? Like, like you can actually, I'm sure there was days you're like, well, you said it, it's over. This isn't a thing. And then it leads to like moments like this, which you start winning awards. Like it's that cliche, traditional, like down on my last leg, like down at I'm just at the very end, and before it all implodes, and all of a sudden, there's just this like silver lining. You just like pull yourself up.
Right. Well, and so through that August until today, it's even past today, but to today, we were going through this conversion. I thought we were going to make it, but we were dying. We were on our pennies, like literally living cent to cent to survive this brewery. And then coming into January, we're in court. So we're dealing with like, you have to be very regimented on your spending. You have to publish it. There's someone watching you. There's these trustees that are literally watching over your shoulders. But that whole time I had to drive strategy. I had to motivate the team. I had to say, guys, oh yeah, absolutely. Let's go after awards. You know, we submitted for this award in, I don't know, October, something like that.
And shit.
Yeah. And we're like, we probably wouldn't even be around at that point. Like, who knows? But we had to keep that faith. You had to keep moving forward. You had to keep driving and keep our team believing that we're going to get it done. And so even though I might be worried that I'm not going to be able to take another breath, I'm drowning.
It's the duck thing, right?
The duck thing, yeah. Like, except I only had just my beak above water. And so it was, you had to do that. You had to keep looking forward. You had to show up to the brewery and smile and try and figure out how to get by. And Graham and I were able to sort of manage that anxiety together. And then you come out the other side and things like winning a gold medal in the Canadian Brewing Awards for non-alcoholic beer is a pretty wild sort of amazing thing to come out of. And so it's if we didn't do all those steps, if I had just said, well, let's just cut costs and stop brewing and wait to see what happens, we'd be dead. We would never made it. We hustled. My team were like soldiers. They just kept going, and we just managed to inch our way along and get through this thing. And they're all still here to this day. They're still fighting. So I'm very, very proud. I now own a piece of this brewery. I'm running the show, and it's awesome. And, our core strategy, we applied for a couple of awards. It would have been cool to bring home a bunch of medals, but winning the non-alcoholic beer was the ultimate home run for us. That's where we think the next opportunity is in our strategy. And so we're very proud to have the best beer in the world. And it might've been the Canadian Awards, but anybody could have applied. So I think it was,
exactly.
It's a world award for sure.
Which is, now to hear this story, like that, right? Like from the den to the nightlife to, like embassy to hi-fi, like, this scenario now, like from the outside, I was like, oh, it's a smart dude. I'm sure he's going to figure this out. But now that you're back in the hospitality restaurant bar space, it's like, it's almost like exactly where you're supposed to be.
It does feel that way some days. Some days it doesn't, but some days, when we've been powering up this team and we're trying to get back into bars and restaurants, Tool Shed, I think most people have heard of it, especially in Calgary, they've heard of it, but it's waned in the last couple of years. And so you don't see it on tap. It's not at the ship. You go to these legendary locations and you can't get it. And so, powering up again in this world of knowing this space, I've started calling on those people and
who is this? Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah. Right. Hey, do you want to have a beer? And they're like, I haven't talked to you in 15 years.
Exactly.
Let's do it. And then I sit down and say, hey, I'm nice to meet you. I'm with Tool Shed. So we're going to have beers, but I would love you to carry my beer again. And so that has worked out really well. I've been able to leverage some of those relationships and some of the guys that I've known for 30 years, they've, like I've said things like, I've just barely made it through. I need to have a conversation with you to get into your group of restaurants. And they've said amazing things like, just tell me what you need. Like, what is it you need? And I'm like, well, I need a tap, and then I need a couple of non-alcs in your fridge. And they're like, consider it done, but you got to come out for lunch. And so then we'd go and have beers and reminisce about
your thing.
Chaos of the den and the embassy days.
All the places.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So full circle.
So cool, man. This has been amazing.
Totally.
Like to catch you now, because I've been, since we reconnected in 19, I was like, I know what's kind of going on, but this is to like go through this is a very unique experience. The perfect segue to the last question. As you're making these phone calls to these old people in Calgary and like reconnecting, I say Calgary, where's your head go? So I've watched, I don't know, 40 of your episodes to try and figure 40? Out I've shot 130, Costello.
I've watched 100, but I haven't finished 100.
Okay, great.
I've watched fully through 40 at least. But it's an easy one for me. It's connection.
Mm-hmm.
And this city, it's one of the funnest things that I do when I'm out meeting people in this city is how fast I can close to a single degree of connection. Mm-hmm. So a single degree of separation. Mm-hmm. People say there's whatever it is, 6 degrees in the world. Calgary to me is 1. Yep. There's always 1 degree of separation. Mm-hmm. And it's one of my things I love to do is try and figure out what it is as fast as humanly possible. Yep. And I try and do it without the company. So I don't say like, hey, nice to meet you, Jeff. What's your company? Mm-hmm. And then I go, okay, I know somebody in that company. And I start with like, so, whereabouts in the city do you live? Or what bars do you go to? Or, what sports do you play? And you try and work your way in. Yeah. But it always finds it. Like even though the city is now getting really big and, Toronto seems to be moving here, it still works because somebody knows that person that's moved here. And the connections in this city, I think are immeasurable. It's the wealth that we have. Yep. And if you learn to, or you get comfortable with leveraging that, those happy accidents are standing right in front of you because if it's not you, that guy that can get you what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So connection.
Which, that's what this show is built on.
Totally.
Right? It's like, it's all of it.
That's what I love about it. Yeah.
And what's cool is too, I think when you do make the connection and there's an opportunity for another connection, it's very quick. That's made very quickly.
Big time.
You know what I mean? It's like
big time.
No, I don't. It's not in my wheelhouse, but go talk to this guy.
That's right.
And that instant connection is like, people are very receptive. As long as it comes with like this personal referral, they're like, yeah, what do you need and when do you want to meet?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. As long as you don't screw it up in this city, you're in a good spot.
Agreed.
So yeah, I love it.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much.
This has been on the radar for a long time. You and I have talked enough to be like, okay, when? So to actually like have you sit down and run through it, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome. Mm-hmm. Great to catch up.
Yeah, we'll have a beer soon.
You bet. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.